50 seconds.
Can you hear me? So a big part of my campaign is leadership beyond legislation. By that, I mean that not everything happens in policy. Policy is definitely an avenue for solution and guidance for communities. But leadership beyond legislation means having important conversations with community organizations, mobilizing grassroots when you need to, and really reaching out and connecting with people and organizations. I also am a candidate that walks the walk. So this is my low carb campaign, half the carbon footprint of a regular business card, and that's because I really care about the environment and I'm trying to be low carbon footprint.
Okay, you did not address the question, which was how are you different on the issue? Who's next? Anybody different on any issues? If you all agree on the issues, let's just say that we all agree and we'll go on to the next question. Joel Rubin.
Thank you, Charles. Hi, everyone. I'm Joel Rubin, running for delegate. And to go to Charles's question, I do differ significantly on issues of security. And security, I define that as retirement security, health security, homeland security, which we know here in our region is critical. These are issues where I have a deep background in. I have 20 years of service at the federal level as well as at the local level. I'm elected as a town councilman in Chevy Chase. I've been working on issues related to our neighborhood security. We had hate crimes in our community a couple of months ago through hate speech flyers. We fought back against that, and that's an area where I bring a lot of leadership and experience and hope to have your support.
Joel says he's different on the security issue. Is anybody different on any other issue? Anybody? Emily Shetty, what issue do you differ to the other candidates?
Hi, thanks, Charles. This is a great question. So in addition to bringing the lived experience that many of us bring to the table that's a bit different from one another, I also bring 10 years of federal, state, and local policy experience to back up the work and the positions that I hold on these issues. So on health policy specifically, I have a decade of experience working at the federal level, at the state level, and the local level to advance health policy. So when I talk about it, I talk about it as a patient with a chronic illness, I talk about it as the daughter of a nurse, and I also talk about it with an extensive amount of policy experience. So we might have some differences of opinion on some areas of health policy. I think I might be one of the few that believes that the movement we need to make is towards single-payer health here in Maryland, and I could be one of the team members to make that happen.
That might be a difference. You're for single-payer, maybe some of the other candidates are not for single-payer. But anyway, who's got a distinct singular issue? Mila? How do you differentiate yourself from the other candidates on the issues?
On the issues, honestly, I do agree with single payer, but one of the issues that I'm very passionate about that hasn't gotten a lot of coverage is death with dignity. I think that is a very important issue that we as a state and a community need to start addressing. That is the idea that you should be able to make a decision about your own end-of-life care. And that shouldn't be prevented because of politicians who don't want to stand up to interests such as the church, basically.
I'm not so sure these issues people are agreeing. Everybody's talking about an issue, but I'm not sure people disagree. Anyway, let's go down here since we only have microphone. Dana, I'm coming to you.
Well, no, I just wanted to sort of follow up with you. Ask others if they support medical aid in dying. I mean, I'm curious to know. It's an issue that we haven't talked about.
Well, if somebody had, that would be great. I would love somebody to get up and say, hey, I disagree with another candidate on the stage, but you'll get your turn. Anyway, Jared, what's your issue? How are you different from the others?
Yeah, I think one of the issues that I've talked a lot about, and again have lived experience in this, is the updating and advancement of career and technical education for our high schools. College should be an option for every student, but it shouldn't be the only option. And I think I'm the only candidate here who's ever been a public school teacher. So when I talk about options like career and tech ed, when I talk about universal pre-K, I have experience in actually implementing those at a classroom level, in a school system level, when I worked for the Chancellor of DC Public Schools. And at the federal level, I've written legislation, some of which has actually become law, to advance those goals as well.
Okay, Leslie?
Thank you very much. I'm going to agree with you that I think that what we just talked about is very, very similar. I actually don't disagree with anything that's
Let's
just
move
been said.
on to the next
No,
question.
but I'm going to tell you how we are different, and I think that this needs to be drawn out a little bit more. And this also goes back to another article that Adam had written with regard to the tax break that country clubs are receiving currently. So my differentiating experience is that I have 20 years of leadership experience. I started a nonprofit when I was 25 years old. I'm currently the executive director of a public health organization. And essentially what that means is that we are looking at decision-making processes. When it comes back to that issue, we did differ a bit because Al voted differently than some of the other folks said that they would. And the reason is, for me, is that there was a constitutional amendment that would need to be added, that we would need to change the Constitution in order to vote yes on that bill. That's different, and we would have been different in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else down at this end of the table have an issue that they differentiate themselves with the other candidates up here? Because everybody, we're trying to get differences. You guys are all running. We don't want to just pick a name out of the hat to vote.
Well, in the interest of fairness, and since we're trying to spark a debate, Ms. Milano brought up an interesting point.
Use the mic. Use the mic, please.
Is it even, I guess it is working. I was going to see if Al wanted a chance to rebut, given she just
Well, he'll
brought
get
that
a
up to
chance,
connection.
but what's your, Ron, what's your issue that, hey, this is the issue that we all have different experiences, we're all from different backgrounds. This is the issue that I'm different. I know these other people up here. This is the issue that I'm different on that. Maybe everybody's the same, like I said.
I think, I mean, I applaud the effort to try to draw these differences out. But I think the reason why it seems so difficult, especially in a setting like this, in a forum like this, is because you're essentially asking someone to shoot themselves in the foot.
I don't think you can be different. I mean, it's not.
Well,
I'm not asking
you can be different, but the reason why we're all running different practices is because we all have a lot of shared values. So
Yeah, but you're running against each other.
to a certain extent, right? Because certain people get the seat. So what you're trying to do is to get people to believe in what you stand for, not necessarily what somebody else, how you stand against someone else.
That's what I'm getting to. Maybe all of you agree on everything, and that that we can get that behind us.
I think if we could, if you drill down on some of these issues, maybe you would see more differences. But on a higher level, I think it is going to continue to be shared. So I have to stick with that.
Okay, we can. Does anybody on that side of the table have any issues that they think they have a different position on, or should we go on to the next question? Al, do you want to? No. Okay. All righty. Here we go. I guess. Too bad Adam's not here. Anyway, let's go to transportation. That's a big rubber meets the road issue, no pun intended. But Governor Hogan has proposed spending a lot of money widening in 495 and 270. Who drove tonight, by the way? Everybody? That's what he has pushed much of the state share of the Purple Line to Montgomery County and Prince George's County. The Metro system is also clamoring for committed funding from Maryland, Virginia, D.C. Let's face it, there's not enough transportation dollars to go around. So if you were elected, what would be your transportation priority out of those things or something else? Who wants to take that one first? Al Parr, go ahead, you have the mic.
I have the microphone. We'll work in 2 seconds. I promise I do.
I'm going to have to talk loudly. There you go. So transportation, first of all, good evening to all of you. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thanks to my fellow candidates. So the questions about transportation. What are my priorities? So top priority for me is fixing the metro system. The metro system is so critical to the economy of the Washington region, to Montgomery County, and to the state of Maryland. That really needs to be our top priority, to bring that system up to a good state of repair and safety. And that piece of infrastructure is critical to existing businesses, new businesses. That's priority number one. In terms of Governor Hogan's flip-flop proposal to widen the Beltway and privatize lanes on 270 and 295, I'm against widening roads and adding new toll roads. I would rather invest in more transit such as buses, pedestrian and bike infrastructure, and commuter rail like the MARC train.
I've driven up 270, 495 at weekends, rush hour. Everybody drives, let's face it, I drive. I mean, it gets pretty bad, 495, 270. Who's next? Joel Rubin? Can we move the mic down, or do we want to have?
They don't have a mic.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're going to have to,
I'll use my
Get a
voice.
battery for the microphone, the battery died.
if you guys in the back have trouble hearing, just tell us up here, and we'll try to speak louder.
Can we use that one?
Then I can't speak.
Well,
Is that what you guys want?
So I was gonna joke that I'll use my inside voice when my 3 young girls decide to go nuts and nobody can hear anything in the house, but I don't have to now, thankfully, for this. Going to transportation, it's a quality of life issue. It really does affect all of us, up and down, in terms of all of our aspects of our life. Be it getting to work, be it having the ability to engage people, have social quality, social life, and also, frankly, it's a significant driver of climate change and of carbon emissions. And so we have to get it right. We have to invest in public infrastructure and public transit. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, on the Purple Line, for example, the rollout was botched by the governor. The Transportation Trust Fund is expended. We are not putting our dollars in the right direction for our transportation infrastructure. And as a result, we don't have that many dollars to invest in public transit. And that will be a priority. We try to find the money to really make a sustainable infrastructure for us.
Okay, thank you. Lila?
Hi. What Joel said sounds great, except there weren't any actual proposals in there. I support the legislation that Delegate Mark Corman has currently adopted, which would create a lockbox within the Transportation Trust Fund that would put an additional $150 million a year on top of the existing capital budget funding. It would also allow for a dedicated, mandated 3% per year increase in funding as long as Metro continues to hit performance improvements on their infrastructure improvements and keep their end of the bargain up. Keep Metro running, keep it not running over people, keep it going on time. Those basic things that somehow we've forgotten to prioritize.
Go ahead, Helga, we'll try to have rebuttal after.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
Once
named-
everybody gets a turn, we're gonna try to get a discussion, but Helga, what would be your priority, knowing that there's limited transportation dollars?
So I agree that there are way too many cars on the road, and I'm very concerned about the carbon emissions. I think we also miss out a lot when we don't have sidewalks and we don't talk to our neighbors. And building back that sense of community, connecting with our neighbors, knowing their names is really important. There's a product, a trike called an ELF that I've looked into, and it has solar panels on the roof. It can go 35 miles an hour. And it's like a Flintstone mobile. You pedal it, but if you hit a big hill and you don't want to be sweaty when you get to work, you can kick in the battery. And I think this kind of goes to your point. Everyone gets in their cars because they want to get, they want to get there quickly and easily. A product like this, it has no emissions. And it also, it works on that obesity issue that is also a concern, a health concern. So I think that's worth exploring.
But let's face it, most people have a car, whether you want smart growth or not. Many of us are driving, where mass transit doesn't take us. So we have, we're taking 270, we're taking 495. And thank you for that. Who wants to talk about their transportation priority? Jared?
Thank you. So I'm going to embrace what you said earlier. I agree with a lot of the proposals that have been up here, so I won't repeat that. But 2 areas where I think we could really focus on. One gets to your point of sort of folks who have to drive longer distances where it may not be transit accessible. I think we really need to work on sort of that last mile problem where you may have a transit hub that's not too far from your office, but how do you get from the train station to the last mile or the last mile or two to your office park? So working with companies, creating some sort of an incentive for them to set up shuttle bus systems that maybe run in the morning and in the evening, so that if you don't want to drive all the way to Bowie, you can take MARC or you can take wherever, get close, and then have that transit system or that dedicated bus route or shuttle that gets you there. The other issue that I think we need to look at is better public transit or paratransit for our seniors. I've heard that a lot from folks who I've talked to in the district. If you don't want to drive or you don't have the capacity to drive, it can sometimes take up to 2 hours just to get to a doctor's appointment, and we need to do better than that.
Thank you, Jared. Emily?
Thanks. I associate myself with a lot of the comments that have been made by my colleagues here. Also support Delegate Corman's bill to increase dedicated funding for our metro system. I look at our public transportation system from the perspective of a rider. I take the metro, the MARC train, and or a bus every single day to get downtown to work. I'd be curious how many of my colleagues here do the same. Could you guys raise your hands if you take public transportation? Yeah, so same. So a couple of us do, a couple of us have a theoretical perspective on public transportation. For me, dedicated funding is critical. I also support additional resources for our MARC trains in District 18. We're fortunate we have at least a couple of stops, Kensington being a really great one, but it only runs during rush hour, and our bus system in Montgomery County only connects peripherally to it. The train that arrives at 5:40 every evening in Kensington, the bus that gets to that stop arrives at 5:35. So if we make our systems work a little bit better together, we will encourage people to ride.
We'll go back to you, Joe. I want everybody to have a first turn. I'll bring it back to you. That's fair. We're going to get to that side of the table, Dana. You guys passed on the first question. Go ahead.
I don't know. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So I actually was a school teacher in DC for a while. I had a nonprofit teaching financial education. I think one of the things that's great about DC is that they allow kids to take the Metro either for free or they give them a $30 pass. I don't see as many kids. Like when I was a kid, I took the Metro all the time. I just don't see as many kids being involved in it. And I think it's a habit as well. When you get people comfortable to taking buses and taking the Metro, of course we have an issue with where it reaches. Like, if there are places you just can't go. But I do know people that take buses. It takes forever for them to get just from Bethesda to Silver Spring. It takes way too long. And so if we can create that infrastructure, I think that we'll have people, we can actually incentivize people to take the Metro, and then that will increase the numbers.
Dana, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to challenge the premise of your question where you said there's not enough money. There's not enough money because we ended the estate tax. There's not enough money because we don't do combined reporting. There's not enough money because we sunsetted the millionaire's tax bracket. There's enough money if we want there to be money. Now, latest reports show that there will be a deal on dedicated funding for Metro. Maryland's on board, DC's on board, now it's up to Virginia. I expect that they will get on board because this is critical. Like Emily, whenever I go downtown, I take the Metro, even knowing that I might have to spend an extra half hour to do it. Maintenance is not sexy. We have to pay for maintenance. Just the way we haven't been maintaining our democracy, now we're paying the price. But we have to maintain Metro for that. Also, millennials, who are now becoming, I think, the largest segment of the population, take Uber, they take Lyft, they're using an improved taxi system. So I don't think there are that many single people in cars as there used to be, although it's still a problem. And if you want differences amongst the candidates here, well, look, the Purple Line is finally getting built, although as Joe pointed out, there are problems with that. But some candidates up here oppose the Purple Line and others supported it, just as the differences with the ICC existed.
Thank you, Dana. Anybody else on transportation? Oh, you got to go back to, if everybody's, Leslie, did you have a turn? You had a turn? And then we'll go to Joe. We'll go to you next.
I'm not going to take the whole minute because I agree with a lot of what people have said. I think that there is, the other aspect here is that 150 million was actually not the amount of money that's needed. It's actually 167 million. So I think that there is new opportunities for us to go for that money as well. There's 40% of Metro riders are federal employees, so I think we need to lean a little bit heavier on the federal government for an allotment of funding to come from there as well. So in terms of priorities, I think that we, from my perspective, need to leverage technology for our transportation needs. And like Dana was saying, I think that there is some opportunity there with regard to ride sharing, that we can use ride sharing and to either incentivize it in different ways to ensure, as Jared was saying, that we can make that bridge between hubs and houses.
Joel, you were basically mindless today. You didn't really have any proposals, but what you said sounded pretty, I mean, sounded good in the abstract. What's your response?
Sure, no, thanks. And just to add on to what I said earlier, I see this all the time as a council member in Chevy Chase. When it comes to transportation, transportation policy is in many ways disconnected from other policy issues, from development policy, from schools policy. It's not integrated. And so in Annapolis, I will make sure to make a high priority to get transportation policy fully integrated into the full investments that we have at the local level. We need to make sure that when we are increasing the number of residents, we're also increasing the transportation infrastructure appropriately. That's currently just not being done.
Anybody, Nyla, do you want to respond to the point now? Another thing I could throw out, you know, the DC Metro, you're going to have a fight to the death with the Baltimore City electeds who want the red line in Baltimore City. And, you know, you're fighting for the committed. So it's a big state, it's a broad type of thing where you're going to have to go down there and like say, hey, listen, in the DC we're going to be fighting for the Metro money. But is everybody done with this question? All right, let's go on to another question. And I'm going to quote it again from 7th State. Yes. We're going to go into another question, and I'm going to. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. If you can't hear, I appreciate you saying. I appreciate that. Anyway, I'm going to quote again from the 7th State blog, and it kind of touches on the issue that I just talked about, which is kind of fighting it out with Baltimore City. And this article, 2018 article, was about school construction, and again, it was written by Adam Pagnucco. And he said, basically, Team Baltimore got $1 billion for school construction. And he said the big reason for the win was that the entire city stuck together, from the mayor to the city council to the legislators and the state senators. And Adam said, we need a Team MoCo to do something similar. Now, this is an issue that I like to explore on my show a lot. Phil Andrews ran for county executive. He was a county council person. He always said Montgomery County got something like 19 cents on the dollar that it sent down to Annapolis. And I remember asking an elected person about this, and he's not on stage here, just to let you know. And he said, and I said, listen, Baltimore City's so parochial, and you know they fight it out. Why can't Montgomery County be like that? Montgomery County electeds. And he said, you know, I worry about the Baltimore City has so many needs. But now, doesn't Montgomery County have a lot of needs? The big class sizes, ESOL's the biggest growing expenditure in Montgomery County schools, things like that. But what do you see yourself? Do you see yourself going down there conscious of this issue? Maybe you'll be a Baltimore City parochial person versus a big, you know, broad thinking Montgomery County elected. I mean, is there something there? Is there anybody want to address that? Ron? It's a long question. I appreciate your patience.
It sounded more like a statement, but I'm not sure exactly what the question was. But I believe if I can narrow that down briefly, I guess the question is, do you intend to fight as hard as you can for Montgomery County when you get to Annapolis? And the simple answer is yes. I mean, look, we have to be honest, right? Baltimore's a decent sized city, but Montgomery County, Maryland is the engine of the state of Maryland. We've got one of the biggest endorsements you can ever get in the endorsement of Amazon, right? So we need to make sure that if we're going to be the driver of this state, if we're going to, you know, be what the state depends on to like sell its stuff, then we need to get more back to make sure that we maintain and grow along those same lines to keep ourselves in that light. So for me, yeah, top priority.
Who else has something to say on this issue? Jared? Actually, go to Dana because she's on that side.
Charles, you said you've heard this for a long time. It's been a problem for a long time. When I worked on the county council, the council president, Marilyn Preisner, said our problem was we did not appear in Annapolis and let people know that our streets are no longer paved with gold. This is a misperception that the state has, but it continues because of the people who are there. We must work together. We have to figure out a way to do that. The delegation must do that. They must work with the council and the county exec. That's not about ideological differences or policy differences. We share most of those beliefs. That's an advantage, but we have to find a way to work together to make sure those happen. And that depends on who the legislators are, what their character is like, their willingness to use the media, to speak out, to write op-eds, to blog and all the rest, to make sure that people know what the reality is, and we have to fight for it. And I believe everybody up here would fight for it. We just have to figure out the way to do that.
Who else? Let's move the microphone down this way. Is it Mila? You want to take a crack at that one? Okay, she'll pass on that. Helga? Would you fight to the death like Baltimore City, or do you want
I think that, one of the things that's kind of surprised me living in District 18 for many years is that we don't have town halls, and we don't have a way to come together and really hear each other. And I think that cohesiveness is really important. I think we need to be able to work together, have a plan, and really work with the community to mobilize and make things happen. It's only when we really hear each other and are communicating with each other that we can get things done.
Leslie, and then Joel.
I'm a mom of a public school student and one's coming up to kindergarten shortly. And so the overcrowding issue to me is key. When my daughter went to kindergarten, we were living in Capitol Hill previously, or prior to that, and our taxes doubled. And we went from a classroom of 16 kids, 2 teachers, and 1 aide, to a classroom of 28 students, 1 teacher, 1 special needs student, and no aides. So there's a lot of issues that are sort of surrounding the classroom size, which is different than the overcrowding. We have kids who are going to school in portable trailers in the winter. It's unacceptable. So for the way that I plan to deal with this problem, in addition to agreeing with a lot of my colleagues, and I like how Dana had mentioned the steps that we need to take, we need to find additional sources of money. So there's a couple different things. We can go after the money, we should go after the money and fight tooth and nail for it, but there's other ways to get more additional money in an amount of time. But if you want to talk to me after this, it's certainly going.
Joel?
Thanks. So my wife and I have 3 young daughters in the Montgomery County Public Schools. Shall I take a minute to introduce my wife, Melanie? There she is. There's my wife. Yay! and we're really fortunate. I mean, the public schools here in the county are clearly the driver for why many of us live here. Certainly my generation of folks who live in the district, we're deeply committed to ensuring these public schools work for our children. But we can see how they're not in many ways. We have 160,000 kids in the schools, 3,000 new kids every year. It's an extremely diverse population, student population, a quarter Latino. There are significant needs, and we have to be investing, but we need interim steps. For example, some interim steps. Let's get creative. What about pop-up schools? What about using new facilities that can be there for interim periods while construction is ongoing? And the pace of construction does need to speed up. It needs to be a higher priority. In Annapolis, I'll make sure to push for that.
Let's go. Emily, just anecdotally, my son is at the new Silver Creek Middle School and has 31 kids in his math class. I mean, it's like, new school. And Ike Leggett has said, hey, we're not going to be the ATM for the rest of the state anymore, but I don't know how that's working. But Emily, go ahead.
So the question was whether I would fight to the death for our students here in Montgomery County. Absolutely. As an elected official representing this community in Annapolis, absolutely I would put your needs first, and I would make sure that people in Annapolis see that Montgomery County absolutely has needs. District 18 is really unique. Parts of the county school system has overcrowding, requiring wings and new additions and buildings, and students are in portables. And there are other parts of our county, or part of our district, where students are going to school in schools that have a lack of windows and leaking libraries and other challenges. So we need to make sure that people in Annapolis are aware of that. And I think that one of the key ways to do that is to bring people from Annapolis on a field trip here to see the schools and really be a witness to some of the challenges we're having here, in addition to the great suggestions that Dana raised about bringing it to the press and writing op-eds and really raising a ruckus about the important critical needs we have here.
It's got to be a nice bus, Emily, to get everybody to come here. Thank you. We got to work on that. Jared?
Well, I love Emily's idea, and I appreciate Dana's ideas as well. I think there's two things that I want to mention. One of them I think does set me apart from some of the other folks on the stage. I've worked across the state on issues like paid sick leave, on the Maryland DREAM Act, on gun safety. I was the chair of the Educators for Van Hollen campaign, so I know all the other educators, the union folks, the education leaders across the state. I will absolutely fight to the death, but I think what we need to do is, if anybody's ever worked in a legislative setting or even any kind of a legislative group, you have to have compromise. You have to have relationships with people across the state. We have, 40 or 50 legislators in Montgomery County. That is not enough as a block to pass anything on our own. So by definition, we have to work with other counties. And I challenge somewhat of the premise. We need to find common agreement with other counties so that we can work together. What I would have liked to have seen in the Baltimore City bill is Montgomery County legislators to stand up and say, we will support Baltimore, but not unless Montgomery County gets something at the same time. Both have needs. There should be enough to go around.
Yeah.